Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back for another slime video. And look at what we have here. The second rerun of the World of Fantasy Beatdown battle. So, if we take a look at the spreadsheet, we see that World of Fantasy was the second EX meta to ever release. Ever. And then it got reran a couple months later, in late August. So there's been a lot of teams that have come out since then. And this is by no means an overly hard beatdown battle. He does have very high stats, even on EX3, which is the level that used to be where you get the final dupe of the free-to-play unit. And then they cut it down to EX2. But if we take a look, I mean, Jinfreet has 18, almost 19,000 attack. He hits hard. And in Inferno, he hits even harder. Doesn't have that much HP, so he's not too difficult to deal with. It's just that he hits like a freight train. But since there are so many teams that have come out, and because this is the second time it's been rerun, I already have multiple videos out that I'm going to link in the video description that have a lot of alternate teams that I used last year on how to clear this. And then for this video and part 2, it's only going to be new full meta teams. Like, I'm going to use World of Fantasy again just because, but like Vengeance, Idols, Overlord, New Year's Blessing, Visions of Coleus. Like, I'm going to use a whole butt ton of teams that I didn't already previously use. The older videos have a lot of lower tier option alts that can do this. So if you do not have these full meta teams, go look at one of those videos. It should have something for you, maybe, possibly, potentially. But this video and the next video are only going to be newer full meta teams. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and jump in. He doesn't really have anything else going for him. High attack, he burns you a little bit, but it's only one enemy, so you can single target nuke it. Okay, first up is the actual World of Fantasy team as it was pretty much meant to be run, almost. Protector Frey, the Masked Hero, Shizu, Fantasy Milim, Water Alice is on the team, and she's an orb changer, and then we've got Grim Rimuru because he has cheap skills. So let's go ahead and start this up. This should be the only run. The whole gimmick of this meta was that for every skill you used from turn 1 to turn 4, it gave Milim an extra 3% crit damage, and so you were meant to kill in like 4 or 5 turns, but you were supposed to use just a whole butt ton of really cheap, low-cost skills to really buff the Milim's damage up. Now, also caveat, we do have a Barrier Stone active for ult damage, 15%, so just keep that in mind in case my numbers look a little bit higher. But turn 1, we're going to use the Shizu Orb change. Milim can change the other one. If you don't have one of those two, you can just bring free-to-play Tsubasa or Lumi or Traya and just convert turn 1 or Veldora or something like that. And not a big deal. But by using 2 different skills to orb change, it gives us 6% extra crit damage on Milim. And that's pretty much all you're going to do here. So you can see that, I mean, we're doing pretty decent damage. Grim Reamer is giving us extra protection gauge for the first couple of turns. His other debuff skill lowers pierce resistance, which since we brought Alice, we will be piercing, but I don't think it's going to be active by that point. So here, we're going to use Alice's orb change, we use Reamer's orb change, that gives us a full hand of greens, technically, which is great, but remember, I want to use as many skills as humanly possible before we nuke. So we're going to swap him out. We used his debuff already. We're going to use a stack of the attack buff for Shizu, which will go to Milim, and then we're going to use Frey. We're going to use Frey to give us 40 skill points. This hand would turn to green, but more importantly, she's going to give us guaranteed crits and 40 skill points. So we can use the Masked Hero's orb alt swap and the orb damage and resistance down, because that's just another 2 skills that cost a total of 25 points. And we're just continually stacking up more and more crit damage. You don't need big-time huge buffers on this team. He doesn't have that much HP. Yes, my Milim is high level. Yes, she does have good gear. But if you need damage, just bring a different damage support. Milim's physical, so Fount of Wisdom Rimuru, Tempest Elite Benimaru, they will all certainly work. But here, I'm going to alt swap away, and then we'll use Frey to orb change again, and then we're going to get the EX alt for turn 4. and then we shall nuke. We have 50 points. Not really anything I can really use here, because I've already used everything else, and then it would get too expensive. But, turn 4, Exalt for Milim, single target, crit pierce, natural pierce right there. Alright, thank you. And then he's about to ult us, not a big deal, because he's gonna die. So here, we want to use the attack buff, no, actually, no, we want to use the resistance down, right? Yeah, resistance down, and then we'll bring Alice in and use her pierce, because it also lowers water resistance, and Milim is water, so that's, working double time right there. And then, once we use Frey, another 40 points, and that allows us to use Milim's attack buff, or, yeah, crit damage buff. So, attack 30% and 64% crit damage now from using all those skills up until now. And Milim does... We'll watch this ult, because I haven't seen this ult in probably a year, or more, actually. Wonder Ruler. Very old DPS character. She's never used nowadays. But she does 339 magical. So much damage. Such shock. Alright, well that's the World of Fantasy team. Let's move on to some much better teams nowadays. Alright, next is Exalted Champions. A weaker Exalted Champions. We've swapped out Violet. We've swapped out the Masked Hero. We swapped out the Exalted Champion Rimuru. We have instead brought Idle Shuna and then Water Rain, EX Rain. She still gets a magic buff, and her green buff is not necessary because we've got Veldora. Even though he is Earth, he's never going to see the front line, really. But because we are running Exalted Champions in slot 1 and 2, we can use Veldora's Orb Change and make that work. So boom, don't need to worry about that. We'll bring in Milim. We don't need to worry about stealing orbs with the hero either, because Guy's going to ult rush her regardless. Like, it does not matter. And then we'll send these orbs. We'll send Rain last, because she does technically have type advantage. And then turn 2, we're going to rush the ult. And if we get enough orbs from Milim, we'll get her EX ult. Maybe a Guy ult. Not a Guy, well, not a Guy EX ult at least. But here, Rain can go away now for Veldora. And boom. Thank you. We'll use his green buff. And then we can either use the Guy ult rush now, or we can bring Shuna in, because I don't want to leave Veldora up front being Earth. He would actually take a lot of damage, because this Gene Freak hits very hard. But there's the ult rush. We have the green buff active. We have 3 Milim orbs. She's guaranteed her EX ult at this point. And we have max points. So turn 3, we're going to kill. It's super difficult. If you can burst him down, he doesn't really pose that much of a threat. And Milim is strong enough to do that. Even if she wasn't, 112 or 116 or whatever level it is, we've brought inferior buffs on this team. If we brought Violet and we brought Champion Rimuru, it would have been much easier. But synergy buff, well actually, yeah, we use the bigger synergy buff from Shuna. Well no, it's all 40%. And we didn't have to use that. We pretty much a wasted buff at that point. But here, we do 529, type neutral. Again, Guy's buff actually didn't even matter, because we had already gotten 40% synergy power from Shuna. So it matched. So we didn't actually get, we only used, what? The Milim buff, these are interchangeable, and then the buff from Exalted Champion Violet, or Velzard. So we could have done even more had I brought a different support character that cost 55 points. Like if I had brought Space Rimuru Skill Fuse for ult resistance down or something, or literally anybody. Literally anybody. And that would have been just fine, but we did way too much damage anyways. So, Exalted Champions, 3 turn. There you go. Let's move on. Okay, next up is New Year's Blessing plus Tempest Elite Benimaru. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. You don't need Tempest Elite Benimaru. I use him literally for his orb change, and that is it. I do not use his support buff. So he could be literally any blue orb changer, or green orb changer. Like, you could put Trial on this team, or Veldora, or someone, just to change orbs. Like, it would serve the same purpose. We're only using the buffs from Rimuru, Milim, and Shinsha. So we're gonna run with the greens, but we're gonna leave a Rimuru orb, and try and get 3 of them, and we got 5. So great. Excellent. It works out. We're going to give those orbs away to Rimuru, and then we're going to rainbow them. We're going to get his EX ult. We're going to get a lot of points. We're going to a lot of Shion gauge. since these beatdowns were so very early, they didn't really have much resistance to anything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I think we push one more turn. I think being the key word. I mean, we probably could have nuked here. I wasn't exactly sure how much damage we were going to do, but we probably could have nuked here. We had enough points to use everything, right? No, actually we don't have enough points to use everything. That's why we pushed, because we got to use the 40-point attack buff here, and we need 95 points to use both Milim and Shinsha. So that's why we pushed an extra turn. Not that it really matters, because we send 3 orbs there. And now, I don't have enough points to use anything else, right? I physically don't have the points to use Benimaru's orb change. In fact, I don't even think I do use it. I bring Diablo in. Yeah, I bring Diablo in for his crit resistance down. So literally Benimaru's slot is free. You could bring anybody. Someone who actually makes sense for the team. Yeah. There we go. Shion, guaranteed crit, guaranteed synergy. And Rimuru with his attack buff, synergy, crit damage, alt damage, crit resistance down. What are we doing? 548? Yeah, that's more health than he had at full. There you go. Brute force with an orange team. Rainbow orbs, man. They do wonderful things. Give me more units with rainbow orbs, please. Let's move on. Speaking of rainbow orbs, Visions of Coleus. Specifically, Visions of Coleus Rimuru. So, this is a blue-focused team. Does not really matter, because we don't have to go that far to kill. Because whoever gets the most rainbow orbs on this turn is going to be the nuker. Like, all 3 of our ladies are single targets. It literally does not matter. And we're not going to have enough points to use every single buff available. None of them really, well, the weakness strike doesn't matter, right? Because no one's type advantage, no one's water on this team. So we brought Trya instead of Cleash or someone else to orb change turn 1, give us some points so that turn 2, hopefully, we can get lucky and rainbow orb change, because we want to do this as quick as possible. So that's why I say, whoever happens to get a lot of rainbow orbs is going to be the nuker. It could be Blanc, it could be Jean, it could be Violet. They're all fine. They're all level 1, well, Jean's not 120, but Violet and Blanc are 120s, so they're just gonna hit harder by default. But, 1, we get a perfect Violet hand, we have 80 points, and 2, Violet has the most orbs. And 4 rainbow orbs for Violet will give her EX ult. So, excellent. Let's put a stack of the attack on, guaranteed synergy, which will help out our normal orb damage, technically. But we'll orb change with Violet, we'll bring Coleus Rimuru in for Jean, since she has literally no orbs. And then we'll rainbow. And then next turn, we'll have 150 points, which is not quite enough to use 2 80-point skills. It doesn't really matter all that much. You can push an extra turn if you really, really, really want to, but we don't really need to. I do it anyways, just to show you, but you really didn't need to. We had more than enough power on this turn to use like the 80-point buff, the magic buff from Violet, and the 55-point EX ult for Jean, and that would have been just fine. Just fine. But we're going to change orbs anyways, so... I wanted some extra points. It doesn't actually make a difference. Because now we could use... Now on like turn 4, we'll have enough to use 2 80-point skills, so I guess the Jean 100% ult, and the Violet 100% magic damage. That's certainly an option for you. Really unnecessary, though. And at this point, because we've had 3 stacks of Lumi, we're actually overpowering the skill point nerf that Genefree just put on, so we're getting quite a few points back now. So Jean can come in for Coleus Rimuru, and then we can pick and choose. So magic buff, and yeah, the Jean 100% alt buff. It gives her synergy power. She's not going to hit. It probably would have actually been better had we used the second skill for Jean. 70% EX alt, but also space resistance down. Would have helped Violet more, but she does 385, so... And we had another ult for Blanc sitting there as well, which also would have had magic buff and alt damage. So, there we go. Visions of Coleus, brute forcing. Love to see it. And finally, for this video at least, we have the Protectors of Peace meta, the brand new meta that does have type advantage and extra damage against fire enemies, so Water Rimuru, even though he's AoE, will do pretty hefty damage here. So let's start that up. Now I have 2 links in here. Hold on, let me remove that. Okay, so we've brought lesser powerful units. Geld is here. Fount of Wisdom Rimuru is here. Honestly, a better option would probably be Tempest Elite Benimaru, because based on my science testing from months ago, in a single target setting, Benimaru helps with more damage support than Fount of Wisdom Rimuru, because the alt resistance down is much more powerful than the 20% physical resistance down that Fount of Wisdom Rimuru is doing. But if you don't have him, Rimuru is going to work just fine. So we also brought the Masked Hero. She is on the team as well. Octagram Lumi with double skill fusion is giving permanent alt damage and permanent AoE damage. Thank you for the double counterattack. I really appreciate that. But really, we just need to get an alt for Rimuru. He's got 150% alt damage on his own skill, and then guaranteed crits. So we have quite a bit of power coming out of him already, and we know, based on the previous 4 clips that we've seen today, he's not that hard to kill. So you might struggle if you're like a weak 1 player or something, but any player that has a halfway decent team should be able to clear this, especially if you were playing for like Exalted Champions, because it was a half Annie team, and as we saw, it mops the floor with him in 3 turns. So here, okay, we've got the Inspired skill on everybody, so we'll get 8% attack on this turn. Ooh, whoop-de-doo. Full hand. We're going to increase our weakness strike and our weakness resistance down on Jinfree because of the Geld skill and Rimuru's orb change, so that just helps out our damage a little bit here and there. And I think we go to like turn 5 with this team, because I need an alt, and we're not running Isis or Veldora, who's giving us a pretty big, hefty green buff, which I did intentionally, right? Maybe you don't have access to them. Maybe you pulled the hero and Rimuru and Masayuki from your Koban or your free tickets. Maybe you got lucky there. Fount of Wisdom Rimuru has been out for over a year and a half now at this point, almost. And Octagram Lumi is, quote, unquote, a free-to-play character. The double skill fusion certainly is not viable for a lot of players, but even if she's not double skill fused, she can still give permanent alt damage, which will stack alongside Rimuru. So we use literally like almost all the skills on this turn. Get a full hand. This will get Rimuru's alt. Again, we don't really need the EX alt. We get very close right here. If we had had a green buff active, or maybe 1 more orb for him, he would have had his EX alt. But we're already down to half HP. And this is turn 4. And we definitely have enough damage output now to kill. So we'll just swap Rimuru in for Lumi. We'll use both Rimuru buffs, and then we'll bring the hero in to lower the element resistance of Jinfree, which we know based on science, it does not have that much of an impact. So let's nuke. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Rimuru does 696. More than enough damage right there. So there is 5 teams that you can use to clear EX2 of this beatdown battle. The free-to-play Gabiru is not a good character, but always get the free-to-play characters. They might be useful in the future for something specific, especially Chamber of Memories. Also remember that I have links in the video description down below for the previous videos I've made last year clearing this stage, initially when it came out, and then its first rerun. So if these teams don't work for you, maybe some of those will. But that's it for me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.